I would like to find an appropriate way of saying thank you and goodbye. And I'm no longer in control, which is why I don't like having to walk with someone.
Patrick Stewart just turned 85 years old, and the photos that surfaced from his birthday have shocked fans around the world. This isn't the commanding presence who captivated audiences as Captain Jean-Luc Picard for decades. This isn't the Shakespearean actor who brought gravitas and intelligence to every role he touched. The man in these recent photos looks frail, diminished, and isolated in ways that have left fans heartbroken and concerned about one of the most beloved actors in science fiction history. Patrick Stewart's life at 85 is not what anyone expected or hoped for one of entertainment's most respected figures. And the circumstances surrounding how he's living now reveal uncomfortable truths about aging in Hollywood, about what happens when the industry moves on from even its greatest stars, and about the personal costs of a life spent in the spotlight. Let's start with what we're seeing in recent photos and appearances, because the visual change in Patrick over the past few years has been dramatic and concerning. Patrick has always been distinguished looking, with his bald head, strong features, and commanding presence making him instantly recognizable. Even as he aged through his 70s and early 80s, he maintained a certain vitality and strength that made him seem almost ageless. But recent photos show a man who has aged significantly and rapidly. Patrick appears much thinner than in previous years, with a gauntness to his face that suggests either health issues or significant weight loss. His movements seem slower and more careful, lacking the confident stride he once had. In candid paparazzi photos, he often appears to need assistance walking or standing for extended periods. Most concerningly, Patrick is rarely seen in public anymore. The man who once actively promoted his work, attended industry events, and engaged with fans has largely withdrawn from public life. When he does make appearances, they're brief and he often looks uncomfortable or fatigued. Friends and colleagues who've worked with Patrick have privately expressed concern about his well-being, though publicly everyone maintains that he's simply enjoying a quiet retirement. But the sadness of Patrick's current situation goes beyond just physical aging. It's about isolation, disappointment, and the feeling of being forgotten by an industry he gave so much to for so many decades. Patrick lives now in a relatively modest home, nothing like the grand estates you might expect for someone of his stature and career success. He's been married to his wife Sunny Ozell since 2013, and by all accounts they have a loving relationship. But Patrick's relationship with his children from his first marriage has been strained at various points, and he's spoken in interviews about regrets regarding how his career affected his family life. The isolation is real. Patrick has talked about how Hollywood is a young person's game, how the industry has moved on to new stars and new stories, and how there aren't many substantial roles for actors in their 80s, regardless of their talent or past achievements. After spending 7 seasons and 4 films as Captain Picard, plus all his other work, Patrick finds himself with very limited professional opportunities. The Star Trek Picard series, which ran from 2020 to 2023, was supposed to be a triumphant return for Patrick and a proper send-off for one of television's most beloved characters. But the reality was more complicated and ultimately disappointing. Patrick has been candid in interviews about his frustrations with how the show was handled, about creative disagreements he had with producers, and about feeling that the final product didn't live up to what it could have been. There are reports that Patrick fought hard for Picard to be more in line with the next generation's optimistic vision of the future, but that he was overruled by producers who wanted something darker and more in line with modern, streaming television trends. Patrick compromised more than he wanted to because he felt this might be his last chance to play Picard, but looking back, he's expressed regret about not fighting harder for his vision. The physical toll of making Picard was also significant. Patrick was in his late 70s and early 80s during filming, and the demanding schedule of a television series is exhausting for actors half his age. There were days when Patrick struggled with the physical demands of the role, with long hours on set, with the emotional weight of playing a character going through significant challenges. The show required Patrick to perform action sequences, emotional scenes, and lengthy dialogue that would tax any actor, let alone one in his 80s. When Picard ended in 2023, Patrick apparently hoped there might be other opportunities, other roles that would allow him to continue working. But those opportunities haven't materialized. At 85, Patrick is considered too old for most roles, and the industry has largely moved on. The calls from agents and producers have slowed to a trickle. The roles being offered, when they come at all, are small parts or cameos rather than substantial work. This has been difficult for Patrick, who has been working continuously since the 1960s. Acting isn't just his profession. It's his identity, his passion, his purpose. To suddenly find himself with limited opportunities to do the thing he loves most is genuinely heartbreaking. Patrick has talked about feeling lost, about struggling with what to do with his time, about missing the camaraderie and challenge of working on productions. The financial situation adds another layer of sadness. While Patrick has had a long and successful career, he's not wealthy in the way that some might assume. Acting in television, even in hit shows, didn't pay as well in the 80s and 90s as it does now. Patrick made good money from Star Trek, but not generational wealth. He's had divorces, property settlements, taxes, and the normal expenses of living for decades. At 85, Patrick is living comfortably but not extravagantly. He has to be careful with money in a way that might surprise fans who assume someone of his stature would be set for life. There are reports that Patrick has had to sell various properties over the years, that he lives more modestly than many would expect, and that financial considerations do factor into his decisions. The health concerns are real and growing. While Patrick hasn't publicly disclosed any specific conditions, people close to him have suggested he's dealing with the typical health challenges that come with being 85. Mobility issues, fatigue, possible cognitive changes that are normal with aging. There have been occasions where Patrick has appeared confused or disoriented in public, where he's needed prompting or assistance that he didn't need just a few years ago. Patrick is also dealing with the grief of losing friends and colleagues. At 85, you've lived long enough to watch many people you care about pass away. Patrick has lost numerous friends from his theater days, from Star Trek, from his decades in the industry. Each loss takes a toll, reminds you of your own mortality, and reduces the circle of people who share your memories and experiences. The legacy concerns weigh on him too. Patrick has spoken in recent interviews about worrying about how he'll be remembered, whether his work mattered, whether the impact he tried to have through roles like Picard made any real difference. He sees the current state of Star Trek, which he's been critical of, and wonders if everything he built with the next generation is being squandered or forgotten. Patrick also struggles with the disconnect between his public image and his private reality. Millions of people around the world see him as Captain Picard, confident, commanding, wise, unflappable. But Patrick knows he's just a man with all the vulnerabilities, fears, and struggles that any person faces. Living up to that idealized image becomes exhausting when the reality is that you're an 85-year-old man dealing with the challenges of aging. There's also the disappointment about the current state of the industry and the world. Patrick has always been politically engaged, passionate about social justice, outspoken about causes he believes in. But at 85, watching the world and seeing many of the same problems he's fought against his entire life still persisting or even getting worse, that takes a psychological toll. It's hard not to feel like despite all your efforts and platform, not enough has changed. The isolation is perhaps the saddest aspect. At 85, your social circle naturally shrinks. Friends pass away, people move, health issues make socializing more difficult. Patrick lives a quiet life now, seeing far fewer people than during his working years. The constant activity and engagement of being on set, working with crews and casts, doing press and appearances, all of that provided social connection and purpose that's now largely absent. Patrick has his wife, Sunny, who by all accounts is devoted and supportive, but there's a 38-year age gap between them. Sunny is in her 40s while Patrick is 85. While their relationship appears strong, that age difference inevitably affects the dynamic and what they can share in terms of life experiences and future planning. His relationship with his children has improved in recent years, according to some reports, but there's still sadness about lost time, about periods when his career took priority over family, about regrets that any parent accumulates over decades. Patrick has spoken about wishing he'd been more present for his children when they were young, about recognizing that his devotion to his craft came at a cost to his personal relationships. The quiet days at 85 are filled with reflection, often bittersweet. Patrick reads, spends time with his wife, occasionally does voice work from home that doesn't require the physical demands of on-set acting. But the energy, the drive, the constant forward momentum of a busy career, all of that is gone. And for someone who defined himself through work for 6 decades, that absence leaves a void. Patrick has talked about mortality more in recent interviews, about accepting that he has more years behind him than ahead of him, about trying to make peace with his life and career and legacy. That's heavy stuff to carry, and it shows in his demeanor and appearance. There's also frustration about physical limitations. Patrick was always active, enjoyed fencing and other physical activities, took pride in his physicality as an actor. Now, at 85, simple tasks can be challenging. Needing assistance with things you once did easily, losing independence bit by bit, that's difficult for anyone, but particularly for someone with Patrick's pride and self-sufficiency. The industry has essentially moved on from Patrick. Stewart. New Star Trek series continue without him. Younger actors play captains and lead characters. The storytelling has shifted in directions Patrick doesn't always agree with or enjoy. He's become a legacy figure, respected but largely relegated to the past, rather than being part of the present or future. When industry events honor Patrick or his work, it feels bittersweet, recognition for what was rather than what is or what's to come. Standing ovations and lifetime achievement awards, while meaningful, also carry the subtext that your active career is essentially over, that you're being celebrated for the past rather than the present. Patrick's life at 85 isn't tragic in obvious ways. He has a home, a loving partner, financial security, his health considering his age. But it is sad in the quiet ways that aging often is. The slowing down, the isolation, the sense of diminishment, the gap between the powerful figure he was and the elderly man he's become. Fans who grew up watching Patrick command the Enterprise, who looked to Captain Picard as a role model for intelligence, integrity, and leadership, struggle to reconcile that image with an 85-year-old man who looks fragile in paparazzi photos. But that disconnect is part of what makes this sad. Patrick Stewart, the person, has always been separate from the larger-than-life characters he played, and now the distance between them has never been more apparent. The sadness of Patrick Stewart at 85 is the sadness of aging itself, made more poignant because we watched him be so vital and commanding for so long. It's a reminder that time is undefeated, that even the strongest presences eventually fade, and that the industry that celebrated you for decades will move on regardless of what you meant to multiple generations of viewers. Patrick deserves better than this quiet diminishment. He deserves substantial roles, recognition, engagement, purpose. But the reality of being 85 in an industry obsessed with youth means those things are largely out of reach. So Patrick lives quietly, reflects on an extraordinary career, and navigates the challenges of aging with as much grace as he can muster. Away from the cameras, away from the spotlight that once followed him everywhere, living a life that fans would find sad if they could see how different it is from the commanding presence they remember.